I've spent 1 month learning French in an immersion school, and in that time I've gone from B1 to B2. All in all, it's been incredible. I have a lot of thoughts, so here are the honest thoughts, good and bad. If you're considering an immersion course yourself, then this will be the video for you. So let's get into it. Hello. Let me get comfortable. I also swim comfortably. It is a beautiful day here in Montpellier. Let me just show you the Arc de Triomphe.
You're joking. Not another one? Oh, for God's sake, I can't stand this.
And then we have the Parc de Peru over here. Hang about, there we go. Cool. I'm gonna boil in the sweater though. Where to start really? There's a lot to say. This video was delayed quite a bit. Turns out the super intensive course that I signed up for was super intensive. Who could have predicted this? No, because that's on me. Thank you so much for 100 subscribers. Actually, no, thank you so much for 150 subscribers. Hello, like, guys, I'm kind of famous. Like, has the fame changed me? Guys, I'm still Jenny from the block, you know. Orange drink, if you know, you know. Thank you. For any of you that are new, I'm Jack, I'm a doctor from the UK, and I've taken a career break to study French. Je viens de passer un mois ici en France en apprenant le français à l'une des meilleurs instituts linguistiques de toute la France. Je serai ici pendant 3 mois jusqu'à début de décembre. Now, 1 month ago, could I say that? Just roll the clip. D'ici un an, peut-être que je vous pourrai parler pour en vidéo. So I'm going to walk you through what to expect from an immersion course and answer any of the questions that you might have if you're considering going on an immersion course yourself. So I'll tell you about my experience in full, the parts that I've loved, also some of the downsides as well, because there have been a few surprises. There have been a few things that I wasn't expecting at all. Oh my God, you guys are going to see a bit of leg here. Positively scandalous. So let's start with the basics, just explaining a few things. So what is an immersion course? An immersion course is at its core any course that teaches lessons in a foreign language, exclusively in that foreign language. It can be many things from any level of French. It can go all the way from A0 all the way up to C2. It doesn't require a specific level. And there are benefits at all levels to actually doing an immersion course. It's not particularly good if you're doing it as a beginner or as an expert. It's good all the way through. But why do people do an immersion course? So it turns out that for French lessons that mix between French and English, doing that switch between your French brain and your English brain actually really slows down your progress and the ability that your brain has to pick up new information. Immersion classes are proven to be one of the quickest and most effective ways to actually improve your target language, whatever that may be, whether it's French, Spanish, or any other language. So currently I'm studying at ILA. It's one of France's most accredited language schools. So I've been on the course for a month now. The standard structure at most immersion schools, ILA included, is to have morning classes for a few hours every morning from Monday to Friday. Usually those classes are a small group class and they consist mostly of conversation, but also focusing on the 4 skills of any language. So the 2 passive skills of, try and remember, reading and listening, and the 2 active skills of writing and speaking. That's it. So I'll tell you specifically about ILA. These classes each have a level from A1 all the way up to C2. So your level is determined by a placement exam that you take before you arrive. And I got placed in the B2 class. So that's where I started. But it's not where I am now. So morning classes for the standard course. But did I pick the standard course? No. I did not. I picked the super intensive course. What does that look like? So I have the morning classes as well, but from Tuesday to Thursday, I have conversation classes in the afternoon. And then on Monday to Friday, I have one-on-one tutor sessions or cours particuliers. So pretty full on. And of course, I'm doing all of this in France, going to work, my daily commute, just getting by in French, basically. A lot of bonjour, a lot of est-ce que je peux commander, you know. Plus, I decided to take the option of living in a homestay as well, just to have that French immersion factor. So every day, all day, tous les jours, un petit peu de français partout. So now you have an idea of what the course looks like. Let's get into what you actually need to know, the positives and the negatives of doing a course like this. So, starting with the pros. Pro number 1 is, as you might expect, just the sheer quantity and rate at which you learn. It's just a bajillion, squillion, trillion times faster than anywhere else. I feel like a week on this course is the equivalent of about 3 months at home. So, my French conversation has skyrocketed. You know, today I had a conversation that felt pretty fluent for about 2 hours with a French tutor. You know, when everything kind of feels like it's going well. I guess you would expect, but now it's actually happening, so it's really cool. This compared to the first day that I arrived in France. My host mother picked me up from the airport and, no, I literally couldn't speak at all. Part of it was nerves, of course, but like I could barely manage a sentence other than je suis fatigué. It was a bit demoralizing actually, because it made me think, oh, my French is not as good as I thought, which is not true. It was all hiding in there. It just needed the push to come out. The classes are conversation based, which is just absolutely exactly what I wanted to do. And you spend several hours having conversations purely in French, thinking in French. Of course your French is going to get better. I'm learning so many words that I didn't know before. In classes you're exposed to all sorts of different topics for you to expand your vocabulary, realize where the gaps are and try and fill them. All sorts of different topics, even ones that are slightly boring that you wouldn't do by yourself at home. That's the benefit of being locked in a classroom. That's number one. Number two, working out your errors. If you're doing this kind of shit at home, which is what I was doing, you can add to your knowledge, but you can't correct your own mistakes because you don't know what you're doing wrong. If you spend 1,000 hours at home just doing all of that, you're never going to become fluent in French. Why? You don't know your errors. You don't know the mistakes that you're making. That is something that is essential. We get positive reinforcement, we get negative reinforcement. We know what we do well, we know what we don't do well. That's how we learn as humans. We just sort of fail upwards and eventually we improve. I've had a lot of correcting and I still need it. I got a list from my tutor today of all of the sentences that I said wrong in my last tutor lesson. As a funny example, I found out that I was saying comment tu t'es passé le week-end instead of comment tu as passé le week-end, since se passer and passer have many different meanings. I was saying, how do you pass yourself the weekend? Oh, bruh. How do you pass yourself the weekend? For sake. Aside from that, point number 3, it's also just time. You're spending a lot of time in class. Scheduling yourself time in a classroom is a commitment. Everyone has a drive to work, but if you've made the commitment to say, I'm going to be here for 3 hours every morning, then you're probably going to do more work than you would be doing if you were at home, unless you have a superhuman level of work ethic. It's like a numbers game. It just means that you'll be spending a whole morning in a classroom. 4th point is the structure. Usually courses have a set structure between 6 to 8 weeks, depending on your level. At ELA, it's 6 weeks up to B2, and then it's 8 weeks from C1 up to C2. Those courses will go over all the essential grammar of whatever level you have. This means, unlike self-study, you can be sure that there's not a gap in your knowledge that you're missing. You can be pretty confident that you've at least covered everything. Fly on my face. You can be at least fairly confident that you've covered everything once, at least in some detail, which is quite reassuring. Conversation ability. ELA is like many other language schools in that they focus heavily on conversation. And that's one of the main reasons why I chose it. Personally, I think conversation is the most important. Le plus important que tu. Realistically, when it comes to speaking French as a foreign language, the most likely situation that's going to be is speaking. I'm not sending a lot of emails in French, I can't lie. I've always felt that my grammar and my vocabulary was good because I could consolidate that at home. But despite that, I had no fluency in speaking at all. It doesn't matter, how complex your vocab is if you actually can't have a conversation. I really didn't have fluency in speaking. Straight away from the first week of class, the progress has just gone crazy. First day, something to be aware of. I really felt like my brain was going to explode. I did a morning class and then I had 2 hours of speaking French, which is the longest that I had ever spoken French in my life. My brain felt foggy at the end of the day, like it felt like I'd been hit in the head by a truck or something. But after the first week, even after the first couple of days, I could see how much I'd already improved. Now after a month, the difference from when I started is just, you can't even really describe it. It's just the comfort you feel, the ability to just form sentences because you've actually been doing it. It's just, we all love to progress fast, and here it's almost impossible not to. A particular shout out is the cours particulier, or the one-on-one sessions. I knew that would be a useful part of it, but I was kind of surprised by how useful they were. If you have even a couple of private lessons, you're able to correct all the little mistakes and ask specific questions of things that you're confused about, which you can't do to the same extent in a standard conversation class. In a small group with 8 people, all of those 8 people need to practice speaking. So you can't be selfish and talk too much. And you can be certain that there will be things flying under your radar. My French teacher, Peggy, shout out Peggy. Peggy told me, despite knowing the grammar, I can't stop myself from saying de les or aller. Like, de les personnes, aller personne. And I said to her, I was like, vraiment, est-ce que je fais ça? She was like, oui, assez souvent. I was like, sake. If you have any specific questions, you can focus on them for an entire lesson, instead of in conversation classes where the structure is set and cover things generally over several weeks. There's a lot to cover, and sometimes, you won't go deep into a topic that you're really struggling with. So shout out to one-on-one lessons. This has really been the key thing that has meant that I've been able to see faster progress from some people who just do the morning classes. And as of week 3, I moved up from the B2 class to the C1 class. Let's go. Let's go. Which puts me at a roughly B2 level. So Yeah, happy with that. Another massive pro of an immersion course is, of course, the culture and staying in a beautiful place. Doing an immersion course in France is the best place to learn French, without a doubt. Aside from having the opportunity to practice your target language, which is a given, language is more than just words. It's completely connected with the culture and the history that surrounds it.
You
You
exist
exist
in
in
the
the context
context of
of
all
all
in which you live and what came before you.
Where's the lie? Where is the lie? You ever think about how certain words just sound French or sound English? Like you associate a certain word with an English person or their attitudes. Language influences its country, and the country influences the language. They're tied together. There's a reason why Esperanto, despite being designed as an international language, doesn't have a massive following nowadays, despite how easy it is to learn. There's not a culture associated with it. There's no country. There's no food. There's no music. There's no place. The language is tied to the countries that speak it. And that's why you have subtle differences in the language from country to country. As I say, it's all tied together. Montpellier is a beautiful city in the south of France. I'm looking over at a gorgeous park right now. It's not touristy at all. Nobody's out on the streets really taking photos. A lot of the locals here take photos, but that's just because the city looks nice. The weather is lovely. It doesn't really matter what time of the year it is. It's sunny 300 days a year. It's the south of France. Like, it's certainly better than the UK. Plus, it's easy to get to all sorts of wonderful places nearby. Whether you're going for an afternoon or for a weekend trip, there's so much choice. Personally, I've been to Toulouse, Avignon, and Sète, and they were all fantastic. Although Avignon was my favorite. Le Palais du Pape was just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So if you're looking for the right city, this one has my seal of approval. Making friends. Classes are extremely social. I've made so many friends from the classes just from being around other people, you know? The teachers are also lovely. We all just have a great laugh in class. It's a good environment, it's a good vibe, everyone's enjoying it. In the middle of a morning or afternoon session, there's a pause, and so usually everyone goes down to the cafe and we all just have a chat over some coffee. It's really lovely. Some people like to speak French, most people speak English, but if you'd like to speak French, then that is an option as well. I really like the pause. I think it's lovely. On the course, I've made great friends with people from Australia, Germany, Spain, Switzerland. Even outside of the course, I've made friends with people from France. So yeah, it's great. It's great just to meet new people. Of course it is. Every language school is different. Here are a couple of things that I've really liked about this one in particular. Make sure that when you're looking for a language school, that you think about these things. Does the language school you're looking at offer this, or does it not mention it? Something to consider. The average age of students. The average age of students in Ilé is about 22, which is perfect for me because I'm 25. Some language schools have an average age of 18. I'm at the age now when you have less in common with 18-year-olds. Like, you've not gone to university yet. I've been working for 2 years. There's less in common. So I'm really happy with Ilé. It's got a wide range of ages. There are some people who are in their 50s and their 60s, and there are some people who are 18 or 19. It's a really great mix. So have a look at that. Ability to change level. Some schools require you to pass an exam in order to change your level. That wasn't necessary here. I spoke with my tutor and she said that I was at an appropriate level to go up. So I just asked the reception and they changed my class. Initially, it was just to try it out, and then I felt very comfortable there, so I stayed there. And so many other students at this school have found it very easy. Maybe worth having a look to see if you're placed in the wrong level, whether you have to stay there or if you have the ability to change. Class and teacher. Sometimes you might not click with a teacher. That's completely fine. Are you able to change that? Are you able to change class? I changed my afternoon class a couple of weeks ago because there were 2 students who joined that were just so horrendously rude. Speaking in German for the whole class despite being told to stop to speak in French. So distracting, making sexist jokes. I was unable to think. None of the other students were able to think at all. Just being overall, just not somewhere that I wanted to stay. So I was able to change class. I went to the reception. I said, "Can I change?" They said, "Of course. And by the way, let us know about these students. If there's anything else that you want to say, or if there's anything you want to come to us about, then tell us." Our language school, for the people who are staying here for a longer period of time, sends check-in emails to check in how students are doing. Everyone at the reception is incredibly friendly and you know each other. The reception staff, if you want to change something, they will change it. You know, these are things that I am so grateful to have. Ability to change accommodation. More on that later. Little wins. It happened. I finally read French for the first time without realizing that it was French. Yeah. I remember when that happened in Spanish, I was like, what the fuck? When you don't realize, and then you look back and you're like, wait, yo, that's crazy. Little wins. I finally feel like I'm powering through the anxiety of speaking in French. The only way out is through. This pushes you through. You're speaking in French. You have to speak in French. And so you do speak in French. Being able to have full conversations in shops in French without someone correcting you. Note on that though, if you are speaking to someone in French and they try and speak back to you in English, It's not always intended as rude. Sometimes they notice that their English is better than your French. And sometimes you might be having difficulty and they may think that you'd prefer to speak in English. Sometimes people do appreciate that. Sure, it would be better to ask, but sometimes it's coming from a helpful point of view, not just an I'm better than you point of view. If you want to continue speaking in French, you can clarify what you prefer, and that is allowed. Also, if something is too hard, you can speak in English. You haven't failed. Sometimes there is a nuanced point that you've tried twice to get across, and it's easier to say it in English. You know, you're doing enough. As long as you're trying, that's the main thing. Now let's talk about the negative side of things. For some of you who are thinking about taking an immersion course, it's important to take this into consideration before you decide to take the plunge and book it, or before you decide which course you're going to do. Immersion courses are fantastic, but immersion completely depends on you. I'm going to say something that might be a bit surprising. Despite language learning being easier than it ever has been because of resources online, that is a double-edged sword. You can access all languages from anywhere in the world, and that means you can access English all day, every day. A consequence of the internet means that a language course now is very different from a language course 20 years ago. Thanks to the internet, it's now something that you actually have to choose. If you don't consciously make the decision to immerse yourself, then it could be an Emily in Paris situation. You could come back from 3 months in France having learned nothing. If you spend your time after class speaking English, watching English shows, listening to English music, doing nothing else in French, you might as well just be doing a course back home. Whereas if you spend your time listening to French podcasts, listening to French music, spending time with your homestay family, reading French books, making a conscious effort to think in French, that will make the difference. As well as that, how much you take away from class can depend on your method. What I try and do during class is write down the words that I don't understand, and then at least for some of those words, I make them into flashcards so that I'll remember them. Some of the most important words, at least I'm actually getting them in my head so I can remember them and use them. It also depends on what your motivations are. You know, some people go to this school because they have to, because they're Swiss students who need to do a language exchange. I sometimes see those students through a window of a classroom playing Candy Crush on their phones. Maybe I'm being too harsh. If I was forced to be in, I don't know, an IT class, maybe I'd feel the same way. I don't know. So it really depends. You could be in the same class as someone and make twice the progress or half the progress. It all depends on what you do. The second con is uncertainty around your homestay. Possibly one of the best things that you can do for your French is stay with a homestay family. It's like being in class but picking up passive French while you're at home. Also, it tends to often be the cheapest option. So sounds like a win-win, right? Unfortunately, this is probably the most uncertain aspect of your stay. There are lots of things that can go fantastically, but then there are also things that could go not so well. Some people talk about having wonderful experiences, and some people talk about having absolute nightmares. Personally, I liked my first accommodation and I got along well with my host mother, but then she said the only option for having dinner was to cook with the microwave for 3 months, which obviously was just, I was like, that's not gonna work, not gonna work out. So that added some worry and uncertainty to the first couple of weeks as we had to work out what to do. And I was eating microwave dinners. Heureusement, j'ai de la chance. The accommodation team at Ela are so lovely. Shout out Alison. Love Alison. I moved pretty easily to a new family. It was no hard feelings. My host mom was like, yeah, that makes sense. You're here for 3 months. However, now I find I don't really speak to my new host family very much. They live in a separate apartment within the same house. And I don't really see them very much. Honestly though, that's kind of fine because I am doing enough French as it is. The thing that I was dreading has happened. I'm losing my Spanish. Mi español se está empeorando. I find myself, cuando quiero hablar en español, las palabras se mezclan en la mente. Es tanto más difícil que antes, que paso todo el día pensando y hablando en francés. Es tanto más difícil. You know, but it's still there. I found myself saying alors, like alors, and parce que instead of porque. Bruh. It's too much to have to think about. There's also similar phrases like à travers de or à travers de, which you can get really mixed up, which are now harder to get right because there's two similar phrases in my brain. A nitpicking point on progression. As you improve into the intermediate level, it's actually fucking hell. Got him. It's actually harder to see progress from week to week, which is an interesting observation. You know, the progress, you can see it more easily at the start, and then it kind of slows down a little bit. That doesn't mean you're not learning as much. It just means that you're expanding your vocabulary. And the more specialist your vocabulary gets, the less frequently you use it. And that's just how it goes. Homesickness, you know, I miss my girlfriend. I miss Dairy milk chocolate. The only chocolate that comes close to dairy milk is a chocolat chaud. We need to bring that to the UK. We need to do some research. We need to get back on that. Do you know what I mean? Where I'm struggling. So my French has come on in leaps and bounds, generally. But there are some things I'm struggling on more than others. I've improved my vocab massively, and I've corrected some of the mistakes that I've been making regularly. I'm struggling too much on saying things the right way. So I'll say my sentences more slowly and I'll correct myself. For example, I was saying the other day, aujourd'hui elle fait plus beau. You know, when I said how I thought it, so it came out as plus beau, but then I thought, wait, but plus is more, so it should be plus. So I was like, il fait plus beau. But then I was like, no, because it's an adjective. My first thought was right, but I spent so long thinking about it that my whole sentence and fluency was just derailed. So if I had just not cared, or if I had cared just a little bit less about what I was saying, people would have understood me anyway. The context clues were there. As long as you can be understood. Confidence also helps with your fluency. I find myself ending a sentence with a question when I use a new phrase, as if to sort of say, is that okay? Which actually slows down conversation. When people go, oh yeah, that works. Or, yeah, that's good, but I might say this instead. They know what I mean. So actually, if I just say it, the conversation will be more fluent. I've actually seen people with less vocab knowledge seem way more fluent than I do because they're not focusing on everything. There's no subtle criticism there. I'm not winning points by focusing too much on grammar. Like, fluency is what I'm here for. At the end of the day, they're doing better in terms of fluidity in speaking. So all in all, that's the list of the pros and cons that I've noticed from my first month in a language immersion school. It's everything that I hoped it would be. My French is coming on leaps and bounds. I've made friends from all over the world. I've dived headfirst into French culture. I've visited some of the most beautiful places that the south of France has to offer. I have a million videos that I want to make, but one of the next ones that I want to do is the culture shocks. Funny things the French do in the south. My takeaways so far. First, if you can spare the time and you can spare the money, if you're considering doing an immersion course, do it. I've learned more in a month than I honestly have in an entire year at home. Secondly, an immersion course is entirely what you make it. A lot of this is up to you. The success of an immersion course, it all depends on your method and what you want to get out of it. When it comes to time in class, more time doesn't always mean more learning. Sometimes you can get more out of consolidating what you've learned. When it comes to Airbnbs versus student accommodation versus a homestay, I won't be able to tell you what you should choose. It all depends on who you are, what you like, and what you want to get out from it. It's worth thinking about that before you decide, and don't let one person's experience persuade you. And be aware, there are good homestays and there are bad homestays. There's good accommodation and there's bad accommodation. There's a big element of luck involved. And for that reason, it's worth looking at Reddit reviews of where you're staying, or possibly even emailing the school directly to find out about their process for changing accommodation. ELA, for example, A+. Oh, there goes the sun. Third, if I can recommend one addition to the standard course structure, it would be one-on-one tutor sessions. And I'm not talking regular. It doesn't have to be regular. Even 2 or 3 private sessions over your course will see you get a lot more out of the experience. Fourth, anecdotally, if you're considering doing an immersion course in the south of France, I can't really recommend a better city than Montpellier to do it. That's everything. So, thank you so much for watching this video. This was a longer break than I was planning, but you can expect to see more from me soon. I will be more than happy to answer any questions that you guys have in the comments. Okay, all right. I'll see you all soon.